Corporate greed has infiltrated our community and your freedom of choice. This weekend, thousands of people will flock to downtown Bozeman for the 46th annual Sweet Pea Music and Arts Festival to celebrate creativity and all that it adds to our lives. It's a hella good time, and if you're in town, I'd highly encourage you to go support the event, the neighboring Slam Festival, and all of the artisans featured throughout the weekend. Like everything else in Bozeman, the Sweet Pea Festival has evolved over the years. But there was one fundamental change this year that made me big mad. In previous years, food vendors have been able to sell beverages of their choice, bottled water, soda, kombucha, whatever. This year, however, outside beverage sales were captured by our local Coca-Cola bottler and distributor, effectively restricting your choices to Coke products only and simultaneously boxing out local providers seeking to offer Sweet Pea patrons a few better-for-you options. I'll say it again, corporate greed has infiltrated our community and your freedom of choice. Pretty sus if you ask me. Allow me to peel back the layers of Coke's business and marketing tactics. Coca-Cola spends roughly $2 billion annually on advertising. To sustain their positive image, they dole out grants under the guise of philanthropy, cultivating relationships with arts councils, civil rights groups, doctors, dentists, dietitians, and anti-hunger activists. Big Soda isn't motivated by its love for the arts or some deep concern for minority rights. Their giving serves only to polish their soiled anti-health agenda. Through multi-million-dollar campaigns, they sustain the feel-good imagery used to sell you and your children the #1 driver of chronic health problems in this country. For example, would you be surprised to learn that in 2003, the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry reversed its years-long position on soda's cavity-causing effect, preceded only by a $1 million grant from Coca-Cola? According to a 2020 Community Health Needs Assessment conducted by the Gallatin County Health Department and other local health authorities, more than 60% of our residents are overweight or obese, and 25% of kids aged 5 to 17 are as well. If you include Montana's tribal kids of the same age group in that 25% figure, it jumps to 42%. 23% of high school age boys drink at least one sugar-sweetened soda per day. That is the exact same percentage of high school students nationwide with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. For multivariable reasons, their testosterone levels on average are about 25% less than that of their father's generation, no cap. And the leading cause of death in Bozeman, like the rest of the country, are heart disease and cancer, largely driven by modifiable lifestyle and nutrition choices. For the first time in the history of our nation, the U.S. is raising a generation of children who are on track to live sicker and shorter lives than their parents. If we're to reverse these trends, access to affordable, high-quality food is essential. For those wanting to clap back that this is an issue of food insecurity, the demographics would suggest otherwise. In Gallatin County, 80% of our residents live within a half mile of a grocery store. And this isn't an issue of food insecurity, it's an issue of visibility. The way the grocery store works is that those brands with the most money to spend get the most shelf space. Marketing influences people's choices, and children are particularly vulnerable to the messaging. Scroll through TikTok and you'll find a staggering 43% of the most popular videos created by Zoomers and Gen Alpha influencers promote food and drinks. 90% of these products are ultra-processed foods and sugar-sweetened beverages. The problem extends far beyond social media, though. In the 1980s, Coca-Cola began using high-fructose corn syrup in place of sugar in their soft drinks. U.S. corn subsidies paid for by American taxpayers, along with foreign sugar import tariffs, flipped the pricing in favor of high-fructose corn syrup and set in motion an historic rise in obesity and diabetes over the next 40 years. Over that time, these corn subsidies amounted to about $500 billion in revenue for U.S. corn producers. There's no nutritional benefit to consuming this high-fructose corn syrup, and yet it makes up about 10% of our daily caloric intake. Fructose stimulates our pleasure pathways and affects dopamine signaling in the brain. Dopamine-related disorders like ADHD affect millions of adults and children who, instead of being encouraged to change their sugar intake, are rather fed amphetamines in an effort to combat the problem. Unsurprisingly, ADHD is positively correlated with chronic sugar consumption. With the overwhelming evidence available, why then do our USDA nutritional guidelines for anyone 2 years and older recommend that up to 10% of our calories can come from added sugar? And I'm not making this up. These figures come straight from the USDA website. These guidelines shape school lunch programs and other federally supported public assistance measures. How do you feel when you learn that $7 billion of the SNAP program goes to purchasing high fructose corn syrup sweetened beverages made by Coke and Pepsi? It's with a tiny bit of optimism that we saw in 2021 the House Ways and Means Committee introduced a bill to impose a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages, and the revenues of which would go to the prevention and treatment and research of diet-related health conditions in disproportionately impacted populations. Coke, however, spent about $3 million that same year lobbying against that bill, which is currently stalled in Congress. Surprise, surprise. While we're following the money, let's break down the economics of the water that Coca-Cola uses. Per their own internal analysis of one specific bottling plant, it took a staggering 35 liters of water to make every half-liter bottle of Coca-Cola. I would suspect their other plants are similar and probably worse. Dasani is a Coca-Cola-owned brand, so this year at Sweet Pea, you'll see plenty of plastic Dasani water bottles floating around. To make Dasani, Coca-Cola purchases water from municipal sources under very favorable payment terms, treats it, bottles it, marks it up 100x, and sells it right back to you. The processing and infrastructure of the local water supply is paid for by local taxpayers, and therefore Coca-Cola's billion-dollar bottled water brand is largely subsidized by you. In the coming weeks, we'll be packaging our own water, Zest 2.0, and giving it away to anyone who needs it, to the food bank, to music venues, emergency services, and free with every purchase of Zesty products at our shop. To be clear, I don't believe that our local Coca-Cola bottling plant has evil people within its walls, nor do I fault Sweet Pea for signing an exclusive deal to require all its vendors to source Coca-Cola products. It takes a lot of money to produce a music and arts festival, and without any direct knowledge of the deal, I imagine they got that money. Though I will note that they never actually reached out to Zesty to ask for it. Honestly, we believe the entire fucking system is rigged from the top down, and reforming it should be our #1 priority. Fear not, my festy friends, for the Zesty boys have a small little solution to offer, at least at the local level. For those of you who wish to remain free from the shackles of Big Bev this weekend, we've partnered with the Montana Science Center, who as of this moment are the only nonprofit given the green light to sell beverages outside of the Coca-Cola portfolio. We're donating all of our products to support them, so pay whatever you can in support of the Science Center. We would suggest at least $3 a can, and we thank you for your generosity. Maybe even pay it forward and buy one for a stranger. People tell us all the time that our berry basil tastes just like a Coke. Don't be afraid to give it a shot. If you don't like kombucha, our Yellowstone yerba mate will also be available, sweetened with monk fruit, no sugar, no calories, and 35 milligrams of caffeine, which is the same amount as a Coca-Cola. If you need to dissolve a nail or a human tooth in a matter of days, go grab a Coke. If you want to keep it 100 and feel good about the vibes you put out to the world, grab a Zesty. Have a great Sweet Pea, y'all, and thanks for watching.